Wayne Carini spent decades earning the trust of classic car lovers who believed he could bring any forgotten machine back to life. But behind the reputation, behind the soft-spoken expertise and steady hands, his world was far more fragile than anyone imagined. Between legal battles he never expected, broken business relationships, and the slow collapse of the show that made him famous, Wayne found himself fighting to protect the legacy he'd spent a lifetime building. What happened to him wasn't sudden. It was a series of events that chipped away at everything he thought was secure. The beginning, a life built inside a garage. Long before the lawsuits, the controversies, or the unexpected end of his TV career, Wayne Carini's story began in a small garage filled with oil, metal, and the sound of tools shaping old engines back to life. His father, Bob Carini, was already a respected figure in the automotive world, owner and operator of Continental Auto and co-founder of the Model A Restorers Car Club of America back in 1952. Wayne grew up watching him revive cars that most people believed were too far gone. By third grade, while other kids were building toys, Wayne was building a Model A engine from scratch. The path ahead seemed obvious, yet he tried to resist it. When he reached adulthood, he believed teaching art would be a more stable life than restoring cars. He left the garage and pursued studies in art education, hoping to build a future away from the grease and pressure of mechanical work. But reality pulled him back. Being an art teacher didn't pay enough to survive, and Wayne soon realized that the world he'd tried to leave behind was the one he needed. He returned to cars with renewed seriousness and began focusing on Ferraris, a turning point that would define his early career. In 1973, he restored his first Ferrari, something he once described as a dream finally coming true. His father later gifted him half of the shop, setting Wayne on a path that would eventually lead him to national recognition. He didn't chase fame. Instead, fame found him at automotive events, where his knowledge, instincts, and dedication stood out. It was at one of these gatherings that television producer Jim Astrachan first noticed him. The moment would change Wayne's life forever, but it would also place him on a road filled with pressures and expectations that would one day come crashing down. Chasing classic cars, the rise, the pressure, and the silent cracks. When Jim Astrachan approached Wayne Carini about doing a television show in the mid-2000s, Wayne didn't see himself as a TV personality. He was a restorer, a businessman, a man who preferred the quiet of a workshop to the glare of a studio light. But Astrachan saw something different, a presence that felt authentic, a man whose passion could carry a series without scripts, gimmicks, or manufactured drama. In 2008, Chasing Classic Cars premiered, and almost immediately, it changed the way people experienced automotive restoration on television. For 13 years, Wayne became the face of an industry that most people rarely saw up close. Fans watched him uncover barn finds, negotiate with collectors, and breathe new life into machines that hadn't run in decades. He wasn't acting. He was simply doing what he had always done. Only now, millions of people were watching. Roger Barr, a seasoned mechanic with decades of experience, joined him as the show's technical anchor. Their friendship and banter added heart to the series, giving viewers a sense that they were inside a real workshop, not a staged production. Behind the scenes, however, the success of the show brought mounting pressure. Any mistake, any slow week, any negotiation gone wrong could become a point of criticism. And as Wayne's public image grew, so did expectations. Running his father's legacy shop, F40 Motorsports, while filming a fast-paced television series stretched him thin. His manager handled most client communication, but Wayne often said privately that when something went wrong, it was him who took the fall, him who absorbed the blame. Outsiders rarely understood the difficulty of running a business tied so tightly to reputation and trust. Then came the first quiet sign that something was changing. In 2019, Season 14 aired with only 4 episodes, an unusually short run that left fans worried. Officially, nothing was wrong. Unofficially, cracks had already begun forming. The year before, Roger Barr had abruptly left the show after a payment dispute, later revealing he had never been paid for his TV appearances and was struggling with health issues and basic living expenses. The Bond viewers thought was unbreakable had fractured behind closed doors. It was the beginning of a slow unraveling that would eventually lead Wayne into one of the most painful chapters of his career. The Pierce Arrow disaster, a legal nightmare. Wayne never saw coming. The turning point, the moment that would drag Wayne Carini into one of the most complicated legal battles of his life, began quietly, long before he even heard the name Robert Richmond. In 2010, Richmond, an antique car collector from Australia, set his eyes on a rare 1934 Pierce Arrow coupe. To make the purchase smoother, he relied on a business acquaintance, Gary Dixon, an American restorer who promised to inspect the car, buy it, restore it, and ship it overseas. Richmond paid $98,000 up front, trusting the process and expecting the car within weeks. But the car never came. Communication soured, promises stretched thin. And by 2016, Gary Dixon filed for bankruptcy while still holding the Pierce Arrow in his possession. Richmond, who had paid in full, was left with nothing, not the car, not updates, not explanations. The situation, already tense, grew worse in 2017 when Gary quietly sold the car without telling Richmond. He contacted Going Motors, a vintage car dealership, and pushed the transaction forward with ownership documents he had obtained under questionable circumstances. This was the moment Wayne unknowingly stepped into the storm. Going Motors reached out to him for an appraisal. Wayne inspected the Pierce Arrow, valued it between $110,000 and $120,000, and when he learned the car was for sale, he decided to buy it. Gary Dixon had provided a clean certificate of ownership. The paperwork checked out. Nothing looked suspicious. In Wayne's eyes, and in any dealer's eyes, the sale was legitimate. Things moved fast after that. RM Auctions reached out and made an offer Wayne never expected, $250,000, far more than he anticipated. They bought the car, later reselling it to a private client for $275,000. The car changed hands quickly, legally, professionally, but only on the surface. When Richmond finally tracked the Pierce Arrow through auction records, he realized what had happened. His car had been sold, resold, and profited from without his consent. And when he learned it was last seen under the care of F40 Motorsports, the situation exploded into a full-scale lawsuit. In 2018, he sued Wayne Carini, F40 Motorsports, Carini Carrozzeria, Going Motors, and everyone involved in the chain of transactions. Wayne, who believed he had done everything by the book, suddenly found himself at the center of accusations that threatened his name, his show, and his livelihood. The courtroom reality. Reputation on trial. When the lawsuit officially moved into the courtroom, Wayne Carini entered a world he had spent his entire career trying to avoid, one where documentation mattered more than passion, and where even innocent decisions could be interpreted as negligence. Richmond's legal team argued that he was the rightful owner of the 1934 Pierce Arrow coupe, and that every sale afterward was invalid because Gary Dixon had never possessed legitimate authority to sell the car. The court reviewed hundreds of pages of transactions, emails, ownership documents, and testimonies. Every name in the chain, including Wayne, was examined. The investigation painted a troubling picture. Gary Dixon had applied for the ownership certificate through the New Jersey DMV and placed the vehicle in his own name. The court later described his actions as bad faith conduct and embezzlement. But Wayne's involvement was different. Unlike Gary, he had no knowledge of the earlier agreement with Richmond. The paperwork he received was official, complete, and appeared legitimate. He had done what every dealer in the industry does: trust the documents placed in front of him. Still, being proven innocent didn't protect him from the damage of simply being named in a lawsuit. For 2 years, the case moved slowly. 2018, then 2019, then into 2020. Fans speculated. Collectors whispered. Industry forums debated whether Wayne had overlooked something he should have caught. Even though he was not at fault, the perception of impropriety lingered, and perception is often more damaging than truth. In June 2020, the judge issued the final ruling. Richmond was restored as the rightful owner of the Pierce Arrow. Gary Dixon was found to have acted dishonestly. Wayne, F40 Motorsports, and other parties were cleared of wrongdoing, but they were required to help refund the final buyer for the restoration work he had invested as part of restoring the chain of ownership. It was a fair verdict legally, but it came at a heavy emotional cost. Wayne had built his entire career on trust. His show operated on trust. His business survived on trust. And now that trust had been shaken, not because of something he'd done, but because of how the public processed the story. Even after being cleared, Wayne struggled with the reality that a single flawed transaction, caused by someone else's misconduct, had reshaped the way people spoke his name. The Lamborghini dispute, a second blow to a shaken legacy. Just when Wayne Carini thought the Pierce Arrow ordeal was finally behind him, another controversy resurfaced, one that fans of chasing classic cars had barely heard about. It happened years earlier, in 2011, when a client known online as Joe312D purchased a 2007 Lamborghini Gallardo from F40 Motorsports. The car itself was flawless, but the problem wasn't mechanical. It was the promise that came with it. The listing had advertised the Gallardo as including a luxury luggage package valued at nearly $88,000, an accessory rare enough to influence the buyer's decision. Trusting Wayne's reputation and the prestige of F40 Motorsports, the client completed the purchase and took delivery. But when the car arrived, the luxury package wasn't there. No luggage, no explanation, and no clarity. When questioned, the F40 team assured the buyer it would be sorted out, but after that first reassurance, communication fell apart. Weeks passed with no answers. Emails went unanswered. Texts were ignored. Even the legal notice the client eventually sent received no immediate response. The silence wasn't just frustrating, it felt disrespectful, especially coming from one of the most respected shops in the industry. The client finally filed a lawsuit, and only then did something shift. It wasn't a lawyer who responded. It was Wayne himself. In an email, he explained that the previous owner had located the missing luggage and would send it. A week later, the client received the full package through FedEx. Surprisingly, inside the shipment was also the Gallardo's spare key, something F40 had initially refused to release, arguing it was never advertised. The matter was resolved out of court, but the damage lingered. The client shared his entire experience on Lamborghini Talk forums, describing F40 Motorsports as unresponsive and Wayne as reluctant to confront problems directly. For many readers, the story wasn't about the luggage, it was about trust. It echoed what others in the industry whispered, that as his business expanded and chasing classic cars gained traction, communication at F40 Motorsports had begun slipping. Wayne wasn't a scam artist, and the courts had already proven he wasn't dishonest. But for a man whose entire career depended on personal integrity, even the perception of avoidable mistakes hurt. The Gallardo dispute became yet another reminder that the higher someone rises in a trust-based industry, the more fragile their reputation becomes. The quiet ending of a television era. By the time these disputes unfolded publicly, chasing classic cars was already showing signs of strain. Season 14 in 2019 aired only 4 episodes, a sharp contrast to the show's usual rhythm. Fans noticed immediately. Why so short? Why so quiet? Why did it feel like something was being held back? The network offered no clear explanation, and Wayne himself stayed silent. But behind the scenes, the pressures were stacking. Roger Barr's abrupt exit from the show marked one of the clearest signs that things were no longer the same. Roger revealed that despite being a beloved on-screen presence, he had never been paid for his TV appearances, only for his mechanical work in the shop. His health was failing, and the financial strain left him struggling with basic needs. Viewers who adored him were shocked, confused, and began questioning how a show built on friendship and passion had allowed something so painful to happen. Wayne, already fighting legal battles and scrambling to protect his name, now had to contend with the public believing he had abandoned a friend. Whether true or not, perception shaped the narrative, and Wayne's legacy became tied to controversies he never intended to create. In 2021, the final episode of Chasing Classic Cars aired without fanfare, without explanation, and without a farewell message. A 13-year run, one of the longest in restoration television, came to an end in silence. Some fans blamed the lawsuits, others blamed the network, many blamed the overall toll of running a business, filming a demanding series, and managing the weight of a public image stretched too thin. But Wayne did not disappear. Despite everything, he continued working at F40 Motorsports, still restoring vehicles with the same passion he learned in his father's garage. In 2024, he began making appearances again at vintage vehicle races, leaving open the possibility of returning to television in some form. Yet the Wayne Carini people saw now was different, a man who had endured the cost of trust, fame, and the fragile nature of reputation. His story is not one of failure, but one of the quiet battles hidden behind success. A reminder that even legends carry burdens the audience never sees. What do you think was the biggest challenge Wayne faced? The lawsuits, the show's pressures, or the struggles inside his own business? Share your thoughts below. If you'd like more stories about the real lives behind your favorite shows, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more.